The rain was falling mercilessly, pounding against the streets like tiny shards of glass. People hurried past, shielding themselves with umbrellas, rushing to safety and warmth. But among the blur of strangers, her voice cut through the storm like a broken, desperate note in a haunting song. She cried for help, weak, trembling, almost swallowed by the sound of thunder. And yet, he walked by. He heard her, but he kept walking, convincing himself it wasn't his problem, that someone else would help. But fate has a strange way of binding two souls, and in that fleeting instant when their eyes finally met, everything changed. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the power of human connection, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone you love, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to Kindness Tales. Together, we can spread stories that remind the world of the humanity we should never lose. He was a man numbed by life. Daniel had long stopped believing in the warmth of strangers or the value of reaching out. After losing his job and failing to save a marriage that once promised forever, his days had become a shadow of what they once were. He walked the streets with heavy steps, eyes on the ground, heart closed off to the world. To him, people were just passing silhouettes, and helping hands were luxuries he no longer had the strength, or courage, to extend. That evening, as rain lashed down and the city dimmed under gray skies, Daniel pulled his coat tighter around him, head bowed. He almost didn't notice her at first. A frail figure slumped against the wall of an abandoned shop, soaked to the skin, shivering as though every bone in her body was breaking apart. Her voice was faint, carried away by the storm, but it was there, a plea for help. For a moment, Daniel's eyes flickered toward her, just long enough to see the outline of desperation in her form. And then he turned away. He convinced himself it was safer not to get involved, that she was just another stranger whose story didn't belong to him. But as he walked, something twisted painfully inside him. That voice, though weak, clung to his memory. It reminded him of another time, long ago, when he had reached out for help and nobody came. He remembered nights of loneliness after his wife left, nights when he wondered if anyone cared at all. He shook the thought away, but life has a way of refusing to let the heart forget. Daniel was halfway down the block when he turned, almost against his own will. And that's when it happened, their eyes met. Even through the veil of rain, he could see them. Eyes wide with fear and exhaustion, yet holding on to the faintest flicker of hope that someone, anyone, might care enough to stop. In that moment, Daniel's world shifted. He no longer saw a stranger. He saw a reflection of himself, the brokenness, the loneliness, the silent scream for mercy. His steps faltered, and suddenly the man who had walked away couldn't keep walking anymore. He returned to her side, crouching down in the rain as she shivered uncontrollably. She looked so fragile, so close to breaking apart. She was young, perhaps in her early 20s, her clothes torn and muddied, her lips trembling. He didn't know her story, but he didn't need to. Her pain spoke louder than any words could. Carefully, he draped his coat around her, shielding her from the storm. Her eyes flickered with gratitude, but also confusion. Why now? Why him? Why did he care? Daniel didn't know how to answer those questions, even in his own heart. All he knew was that something inside him refused to abandon her again. He helped her to her feet, his hands steadying her weak frame, and guided her to a nearby cafe that still had its lights on. The staff looked uneasy as they entered, glancing at her disheveled state, but Daniel's determined expression silenced their judgment. He ordered hot tea and soup, staying by her side as warmth began to creep back into her shaking body. Slowly, she spoke. Her name was Emily. She had been living in the city alone, chasing dreams that had crumbled faster than she could rebuild them. A string of misfortunes, job loss, eviction, and betrayal by someone she thought was a friend, had left her on the streets with nowhere to go. The rain had beaten down on her for hours, and she had cried for help until her voice cracked. Everyone had walked past. Everyone but him. Her story pierced Daniel like a blade. He thought of the night he had collapsed in despair after losing everything he thought defined him, and how no one had come to his rescue. He realized now that maybe life was giving him a chance to be the help he never received, a chance to rewrite the loneliness he once endured. From that night on, Daniel couldn't ignore Emily's struggle. He helped her find a shelter, checked in on her daily, and eventually guided her toward opportunities that allowed her to stand on her own feet again. In helping her, he found himself slowly healing as well. Where once his days felt hollow, now they carried purpose. The smile that began to return to Emily's face ignited something in his own soul he thought had died long ago. But the journey wasn't easy. There were nights Emily fought against despair, pushing him away, convinced she was a burden. There were days Daniel questioned why he was pouring himself into saving someone when he hadn't even saved himself. Yet, every time he looked into her eyes, he remembered the moment everything changed. He remembered that no soul deserves to cry for help unheard. Together, they built a fragile but beautiful bond, one not born of romance but of humanity, of broken souls holding each other up when the world had tried to tear them down. Emily slowly regained her strength, her laughter returning like sunshine breaking through storm clouds. And Daniel, who had once believed he was too far gone, discovered that kindness had the power not only to save others, but to save himself as well. Months later, as spring bloomed in the city, Daniel and Emily sat on a park bench, watching children play and flowers sway in the gentle breeze. She turned to him and whispered that she would never forget the night their eyes met, that night when he chose to care, when he chose to stop walking away. Daniel smiled, realizing that the decision he almost didn't make had rewritten both of their stories forever. Sometimes, the smallest act of kindness becomes the turning point in someone's life. Sometimes, the choice to stop and listen can mean the difference between despair and hope. Daniel had ignored her cry for help at first, but when he finally chose to see her, not just with his eyes, but with his heart, everything changed. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Tales. Every time you engage, you help us continue spreading stories that remind the world of the power of compassion. And before we close, tell us in the comments below, have you ever been in a moment where someone's kindness changed your life, or where you had the chance to change someone else's? Your story might inspire someone who needs it today. Because in the end, what saves us isn't wealth, fame, or power, it's kindness. The kindness we choose to give, even when it's hard. The kindness we offer to strangers, because one day, their eyes might meet ours, and in that moment, everything can change.